Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon and good morning for others. My name is Todd Grossman. I'm the CEO for the Americas for Talkwalker, and I am more than excited to be here with a colleague of mine, Chris Penn. Chris is going to be talking about the social media audience trends during the pandemic. During the last several weeks and months, dramatic changes have occurred everywhere, and especially on social networks. And today we're joined by Chris Penn, who's the co-founder and chief data scientist of Trust Insights, who will share his new research on social media audience trends during the pandemic. Chris, we met each other, the last time we saw each other was over dinner at Social Media Marketing World. And boy, we were just using hand sanitizer back then and no one was wearing masks. And boy, have things changed since then. And before that, you were kind enough to give us insight on a report that you put together on social media trends. And you were telling us about TikTok and YouTube, and I really can't wait to dig in and see where things have evolved since that time. So welcome.
Thank you very much.
And before we start, I'd love to just tell you a little bit about Talkwalker. For those of you who don't know who we are, Talkwalker is a leader in conversational intelligence. We are a listening and analytics company that empowers brands to optimize their digital strategies by understanding conversations at scale. We're global in nature, and we have offices throughout Europe, Asia, and a third of our company are actually technologists and data scientists, and we are leaders in AI. And we've been recognized by Forrester and Gartner, to name a few. Where we specialize in is in areas of protect, measure, and promote, where we help companies with their brand protection and reputation management, especially during these times, where we're measuring the performance of effectiveness of PR and social media campaigns and understanding the brand health of companies and peer companies for our clients. And lastly, we are helping companies understand conversation and context for thought leadership opportunities, content ideation ideas, and understanding who influencers are. Chris, I'd love for you to share with the audience a little bit about what Trust Insights does. And if you can also, I'm a big fan of your almost timely news that comes out Sunday evenings, like at 11:30 p.m. And you also have that data party that you host. So if you could tell us a little bit about that as well, that would be wonderful for the audience.
Sure, very quickly. We are a marketing analytics consulting firm. Easiest way I describe, we're data detectives. You've got a challenge to solve, we'll help you solve it. I do a ton of newsletters. Actually, the one I like better now is the company newsletter. If you go to trustinsights.ai, you can sign up for the newsletter. Every week we feature fresh new data. Tomorrow's newsletter, we'll actually be looking at some of the phrases that you've heard a little overused in this situation, in these uncertain times, unprecedented times, disturbing times, challenging, all these buzzwords. We did an analysis of 2.1 million Facebook posts by brands to see which phrases are getting used the most in the last 7 weeks. We'll have some fun with that tomorrow. But thanks for the introduction. Let's get into the good stuff. This pandemic, we have not seen a global pandemic like this in over 100 years. 1918 was the last time that we saw a substantial challenge like this. Oh, by the way, I should say before we get started, if you have questions, you can either use the Q&A here in the Zoom interface, or you can tweet. If you want to tweet at Talkwalker, at Trust Insights, or just use the hashtag SMPandemic, at hashtag SMPandemic, social media pandemic. You can ask your questions there. We know that everyone in some capacity has had to shelter in place for the last 8 weeks. And we have seen that impact in online. In Britain, we've seen network traffic increase by 60%. In the US, up by 25%. In India, 13%. And so we know the audience is there. We know the audience is paying attention. They're interested. They're online. They're interactive. What we don't know, and what we desperately need to know as marketers, is where should we be spending the time? There are hundreds and hundreds of social platforms, social tools, social networks of every kind, and we need to know where people are spending their time. To set a very quick baseline, one of the things that is really important about social networks is we have to define what that means. What does social media mean? And our definition is any place where the value is provided by the users, and it increases in proportion to the number of users. If I read a blog post, it doesn't matter whether one person reads a blog post or a million people read the blog post. The value doesn't change. I get information out of the blog post. On the other hand, if I go onto something like TikTok, for example, if I was the only user on there, it would have no value whatsoever. The more people who use it, the greater the value it has. And so there are literally hundreds of social networks out there, and it's easy for us to think about the types of social networks where the big names: Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest, and those are important for sure, but we need to broaden our horizons, because right now, as a marketer, you're probably facing reduced budgets. You're probably facing, in some cases, some reduced staffing. You're probably facing a lot of challenges, and you need to place your bets very carefully about where you're going to invest your time, your money, your resources to make social media work for you. So what we did was we looked at the way people search for social networks, because people do a ton of searching to find things. I am constantly surprised at the number of people who will Google the word Facebook just so they can get to Facebook, even because Google pops up as the homepage on many browsers. People will Google Gmail to get to Gmail. I'm like, but it's anyway. It's interesting to see how people use search to indicate intent. So what we did to find these patterns was to look at every possible combination of terms that indicated either someone was signing up for a social network or someone was in the process of using a social network, using key features like reset your password, the login page, etc., as a proxy for their actual usage. We don't have any data from the networks themselves because that's obviously proprietary confidential data, but we do have access to search data. So let's dig in. What did we find? First, in terms of companies that or networks that saw growth in account creation, meaning those words like create new accounts, sign up for TikTok, join Animal Crossing, whatever the case may be, the two standouts, no surprise, first was Zoom with 2,600% more account creation search in the 8 weeks since March 8th compared to the average 8 weeks prior to 2,600% growth. Everybody and their cousin's been using Zoom, understandably so, because that's how we get everything now, from corporate communications to book club to drinking with your friends. The second big standout, Animal Crossing, the kids game. I have never played this. I don't own a Nintendo Switch, so I can't play it. Although supposedly there are ways to get at it. So really surprising to see that game be so popular. The third, of course, Skype. The fourth, Discord. If you're not familiar with Discord, it's like Slack, but more for the consumer side. It was a gaming thing for a while, but it has transcended that. Then we see Twitch, Nextdoor, and a bunch of these new networks. So we see some substantial account growth there. In terms of the absolute numbers, who's getting the most volume on a daily basis? YouTube, SoundCloud, Zoom, Discord, Fortnite, Animal Crossing. Just tons of people searching for these networks and all of the different variations of it. When it comes to usage itself, here we see all search volume, all social networks, and we definitely see a substantial increase in the period of the pandemic. You can see it really ramping up. The big three at the top were Facebook, YouTube, and Pornhub. No surprise there. What's interesting is Facebook was very strong early on, and then tapered down, whereas YouTube has really stayed sort of top of the heap. And then if we get rid of the top three, we then see Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, LinkedIn, Twitch, TikTok is in there, Discord, Fortnite. So you see in that gray period, except for LinkedIn, most networks saw a decent amount of growth. And interestingly, most networks have held on to their growth. If we zoom in on just the pandemic period, we see that there was obviously an initial upsurge, but then it's, for a lot of networks, except for LinkedIn, they were able to hold on to this growth. So people are using social media much more. Again, when we look at those changes in usage, Animal Crossing, Zoom, Curbly, Daily Burn, Skype, TikTok, just tremendous amounts of usage are happening on social networks. And when we dig into the absolute numbers, by far, YouTube is crushing everything in terms of where people are spending their time. Now, a lot of this data is good to see. It's helpful to see top line, but the question is, what's in here that's relevant to us as marketers, and how do we start to make use of this? There are three big trends that we see in this data that I think are important to pay attention to, and those are the massive amounts of time people are spending gaming, video, particularly YouTube, as we mentioned, and then a lot of niche-based networks around where else? The home, because we literally can't leave. So let's dig into some of these trends and see how they apply to you. Number one, in the gaming sphere, we're seeing companies be very thoughtful and clever about how they integrate home-based entertainment into their communications, especially around things like customer retention. This is an example of a promotion that Verizon was doing recently, where they are giving free game credits to things like Roblox and Pokemon Go to subscribers as a way to essentially retain people, to say like, hey, you're a Verizon customer, we want you to stay a Verizon customer. Here are some game credits that we're giving to you as our gift. Now, these credits probably individually don't amount to a whole lot, but obviously when you're handing them out to potentially millions of customers, that expense can add up. But it is a clever way to take advantage of the situation and provide value to customers. Now you're probably saying, well, what if I don't have $10 million to fling to Nintendo for Pokemon Go credits? There's still no reason that you can't, as a brand, offer some of these credits to specific games as maybe giveaways or contests or things, just to keep people engaged. The challenge is, and this is where your homework comes in as a marketer, is to ask your customers, ask your audience, where are you spending your time online? Because your customer base will be different than everybody. Everybody as a whole. There's everybody as a whole and all the things they do, but what are your customers specifically doing? If you can figure that out, you can then figure out what the right promotions are to the people you care about. Make sure that you do that surveying. Don't just assume that everybody plays one of these games, because everyone has a very different demographic. Second thing you should be looking at is, if you've identified through surveying, through questions, through interviews with your audience, the games that people resonate with the most, you should be using tools like Talkwalker to do influencer analysis. Once you've settled in on 2 or 3 franchises, if that's where your audience is spending their time, use influencer analysis. Figure out who is talking about those things that matter to that audience, and then can you partner with them? For example, Charlie Intel, which is a Call of Duty news company, their publication, they have a lot of engagement. They have a lot of conversations going on. They're keeping an eye on the game. They're keeping an eye on the community. If your audience loves playing Call of Duty, this could be potentially one of many influencers that you'd want to identify and do some outreach to. But there's a catch. Gamers in particular are, how do we say this diplomatically, cultural iconoclasts. They are folks who like to break the mold. They are folks who like to do things their way. And so one of the things that you're going to want to do is, again, using social media, social conversation intelligence tools like Talkwalker, look at what the influencers are saying, look at what their communities are saying, and then decide, is this influencer a good fit with our brand? Because there are a lot of influencers who, frankly, are not good fits with your brand. They may use language that some other parts of your audience may find objectionable. They may comport themselves a certain way. They may even just look differently than you're expecting a brand ambassador for your company to look. If you're a button-down company and you've got a gamer who is wearing no shirt and has like a crazy light-up hat, that is probably not a good fit. So we want to make sure that we're using social monitoring tools to look at the words, look at the conversations, take them apart and see, is what's being talked about in line with our brand? And the last thing on gaming I think is really important is, just because you may not have $1 million to spend on a major giveaway or tens of thousands of dollars to spend on an influencer, does not mean that you cannot be involved in the gaming community in some kind, or in any of these niche communities. On services like Twitch, which is live streaming in general now. It used to be gaming only, but it's become much more than that. You can have your employees, if your employees have a substantial overlap with your customer base, if they share interest in the same things, even simple things as play-alongs. Like, hey, the dev team for our product, Todd, you said a third of your company is data scientists, engineers, and tech folks. I would guarantee that at least somewhere in there, there's a decent Call of Duty player, and somewhere in there, there's a decent World of Warcraft player. And it would be okay to have some folks, again, making sure that you set some boundaries and guidelines, but it'd be okay to have them on Twitch, whatever, maybe even help promote them a little bit as come play along with us. Hey, we're all, the cliche is we're all in this together, but have them play along and see what their fans can do. Even if you have some fun poking fun at yourselves. I mean, if you want if you want a really fun time, we could say, come play with Talkwalker's best Call of Duty player and the CEO, and watch the CEO get killed repeatedly. How about it, Todd? Are you up for playing some Call of Duty?
I stick to Fortnite.
Very nice. Very nice. So that's gaming, one of the 3 pillars of content strategy right now. And I want to emphasize that it's important to not take this report as is, because this is a snapshot of the last 8 weeks. You need to be using your social intelligence tools, your conversational intelligence tools, to be checking now and what's happened today, in the last 7 days, in the last 14 days, and keep your finger on the pulse of this, because we're gonna come to that, back to that point again. But these are not static, unchanging times. If anything, the data we're working with right now is changing more rapidly than it ever has in our entire careers as marketers, whether you're 22 and you just graduated into your first marketing role, or whether you're 72 and you're sort of doing the swan song of your career. It doesn't matter. You've never run into a situation like this. So make sure that you're using these tools regularly and frequently to keep a pulse on what your audience is talking about. Second, video, in specific, YouTube, because as we saw, YouTube is where everybody and their cousin is spending time. YouTube is an interesting place in that it is a very long tail environment, but at the top of the short head there's still a tremendous amount of traffic. When we look at March alone in 2020, at the top performing content on YouTube, you see, if we break out the audience into percentages by buckets of 10% each, that top tier of YouTube channels, hundreds of thousands of views, medians, hundreds of thousands of views, thousands of engagements, and an engagement rate of 2.8% for the top, the biggest channels. And then as you go down in, I guess, the rankings, you start to see those numbers drop off rapidly. At the bottom 10% of the top performing channels, and this is about 500,000 of them, 128 median views on a video, but a 7% engagement rate. If you look at your stats in your social media publishing tool of choice, show me a major social network like Facebook that performs anywhere close to a 7% engagement rate. That is crazy good engagement that YouTube gets, even for the smallest channels that other networks don't see. So there's some real opportunity there. Now in March, the big channels obviously were all the news channels. The news cycle was just crazy. But when you're pulling data out of your social intelligence systems, you can segment by much more than just the big names, the top talkers. I was looking, for example, in analytics. I wanted to look specifically at the analytics, people who are on YouTube who are talking about analytics and data science. And there's again, a big channel, and then there's a bunch of others that have much smaller audiences, some individuals, some brands in there. There is opportunity for your company to be found on YouTube for the topics you care about, and to also reach out to influencers that you might want to work with. In this example here, the Data Dash YouTube channel could be a great partner for my company. And because they're not getting millions of views on their stuff, they probably, if they even do collaborations, maybe I could buy them a box of donuts, because 15,000 views is not something that someone's going to say, oh, I'm going to charge you $1 million for 10 million views. It's not going to happen. But it might be the right audience. So when you're using your social intelligence tools to dissect YouTube's data, make sure that you're looking granularly. Who is popular in that's very small, specific sphere on YouTube? That's a great way to make use of it. If you're not comfortable with YouTube, if you're not comfortable with the system or creating video, there are some recommended resources that are completely free that I strongly advise you to look at. Number one, actually, let's go to this one, is the Creator Academy. YouTube Creator Academy is a free, it's not even a course, it's like a university for companies and individuals to learn how to use YouTube. And it contains some really terrific strategies, tactics, individual methods for building up your YouTube channel, from how do I make good video, right? What is good content on YouTube? If you've heard us talk in the past at other events about the Hero Hub Help strategy for content marketing, that came out of YouTube in 2014 and is still a valid strategy today. We have one big hero piece of content every quarter, monthly hub content that you put some promotion behind, and then daily or a high frequency help content, how-to content, as a way to build your YouTube channel. Creator Academy is, I think, an essential part of your marketing toolkit, and again, totally free. It's astonishing just how good Google has made it for all of us to learn the lessons we need to learn. And then learn YouTube ads. YouTube ads are probably one of the great untapped resources by marketers, because even if you can't make video of your own, you can at least make promotional stuff that can go on YouTube, and then take advantage of the fact that YouTube is the second largest search engine on the planet. Right behind its big brother, Google. People search on YouTube for everything. You've probably searched on YouTube for like how to fix a leaky faucet, right? Especially in these uncertain times when you probably don't want to have the repair person in your house, without like gloves and mask and a hazmat suit on. And yet you've got a leaky sink. You go on YouTube, you're like, how to fix a leaky faucet, and you'll find tons of content. If you are a plumbing company, you should absolutely be using YouTube to target all those videos that are out there. So that there's a technique called remarketing lists for search ads for YouTube. So if you're a plumbing company and somebody types in how to fix a leaky faucet on YouTube or on Google, the next time that person goes on YouTube to watch anything, they can see a pre-roll ad from your plumbing company saying, hey, you want to learn how to fix leaky faucets? Come on over and check this out and for our advice. Or if you're using geolocation, book a contactless appointment. We'll work out how to do all the logistics and stuff. We can come fix your faucet and get you squared away. YouTube ads are incredibly robust in terms of what you can do to target people based on their behaviors, based on what they search for, based on what they watch. There's a fantastic concept pioneered by Larry Kim over at Mobile Monkey called the double unicorn principle. Companies like YouTube give you data to target multiple behaviors at the same time. So if you find somebody who loves Star Wars and somebody who loves, say, social media monitoring, you could create a Star Wars themed advertisement to target that person, and it feels like the ad is speaking to them directly because you've got the messaging down, and you've done something that is just so on target. Larry did this as an example with a meme from Deep Space Nine, the Star Trek show, where a Romulan senator badly overacted his line. It's like, it's a fake, and he used this video, this animated GIF inside of a promotional piece of copy, and it just went bananas because people who love that show and remember that thing and are interested in what he has to sell, it resonated amazingly. You can do those same techniques with YouTube ads. Todd, what are you guys doing with YouTube these days?
We have how-to tutorials in terms of how to use the Talkwalker platform. So that's one area in which we demonstrate little video vignettes on how to.
Yep. And Talkwalker's platform also contains, that's where we get all of the YouTube data for all these analyses. You can search for hundreds of millions of YouTube video data points every single month, extract them, and turn them into usable insights. I find it super important.
Yeah, Chris, I really like what you're saying here. This is a time for innovation as well. And just your plumber example is just really good, how someone could really innovate and have contactless tutorials to help. I love it.
Absolutely. Okay, the third branch of our findings is all around these home-based things. When you look at the winners, you see networks like Curbly, which is DIY home improvement, Daily Burn, where you and your friends can get together and work out separately so that you're not sharing the same airspace and contaminating each other, but be doing leaderboards and things like that. Companies like Instructables and their community, which allows you to share all sorts of tips and hacks and tricks. These niches are important because they give us insight into what our audiences are hearing and seeing about their current environment. Let me give you an example. When I look at Curbly, I see the context of what all the conversations around this network are. In the first 7 weeks of the pandemic, what do you see here? Modern office, easy office, small office. Guess what? Of course, everyone's working from home and they're like, how can I refit this place that is suddenly going to become in my house or my apartment that has suddenly become where I'm going to spend 9 hours of my day? When we use social intelligence on these niche networks, we extract tremendous amounts of value from them, and we can see what is on the minds of of people. And we can take advantage of this. We can take advantage of this even if we're not necessarily on those networks themselves. So, really fun example. The folks over at Disney, Star Wars, they recognize that people might not be thrilled with the backgrounds in their offices, right? And so they released virtual backgrounds for platforms like Zoom from the Star Wars franchise. Here's one of me on the Imperial Super Star Destroyer, the Executor, which is Darth Vader's first Star Destroyer before that one got blown up. And there's tons of these. The BBC just released 40 years of set photos from all of their shows. If you've ever wanted to be in a Zoom meeting with Monty Python's Flying Circus in the background, or the many, many iterations of the TARDIS from Doctor Who, these are all available. Now, what's the point here? Using social intelligence, you figure out if people are not able to retrofit their office to look somewhat professional, then give them an alternative. Give them something that they can use to hide that with the technology that's available. And in doing so, create brand loyalty, create brand memory. Brand memory right now is so important because we are all sheltering in place for the most part. And many brands that had been used to doing things a certain way can't anymore. So how do you stay present of mind? What do you have the ability to do to take advantage of the conversations people are having in such a way that you provide value to them and get people to remember you and to think about you in some way other than, here's our response to COVID-19. Nobody cares, right? We all got those emails from everybody. Nobody cares about that. What we do care about is, as a brand, what is this brand doing to make my life better? If it can help me disguise my messy office, great. You should absolutely also be using this data to stimulate and populate conversations in your communities. In the last paper that we did on social networks, one of the things we talked about, which was so important, were private, called velvet rope communities, like Slack and like Discord and Mattermost, and all these networks where there's no search engines, there's no algorithms, there's no AI monitoring you and showing you relevant ads. They're just private communities. For those of us with a little more gray hair, they're basically like bulletin boards and IRC channels from the old days. If you use conversational intelligence correctly, you can figure out what people are talking about and then use that to keep your community engaged. This is an example. When I was doing the research for Curbly, I saw home office and all the variations there. So I asked in our Slack community, if you go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers, it's our free Slack community, got 1,000 people in there. I wanted to start a conversation. And for those of you who do community management in social media, like, what should we talk about today? I don't know, throw some random question out of a poll. No. Use social intelligence, use conversational intelligence to ask the right questions. I asked, hey, what are some hacks that you've done in your home office? And people just piled into this conversation because it's what the broader audience of us were already thinking about based on our searches and the conversations we're having on social media. Take social intelligence data about your industry or about these networks where people are, and mine that data to figure out what to talk about. When you ask your audience, hey, where are you spending your time? If your audience responds back and says, hey, we're spending all of our time on Stack Overflow, great. Put Stack Overflow into a tool like Talkwalker, see what the conversations are around that, and now you know what questions to ask, what conversations to have, maybe even what video and content to make, because it's what's on people's minds. The third application of this is targeted advertising. And we talked about this with the Larry Kim example, but this is where if you know that your audience is interested in, like, say, Curbly, great, and you mine the data about Curbly to see that there's all these things about home offices, you can go to an advertising platform and create custom ads targeting that exact segment of the broader market, if that's a market you want to go after, or intersections. So people who are interested in working from home and people who are in B2B, to give you refined targets that you can show highly tuned advertisements to. This is an advanced advertising technique, but it's one that works really well because it's a relatively low cost, because you're aiming at the intersection of two audiences, not the group as a whole. And you're targeting them with messaging that is on target because they're talking about it on social media. So with these techniques, you can really build highly targeted advertising that can be much more effective than generic messaging. The lesson here for all of us is that these niche social networks are really where they hide the riches. There's so many networks out there, so many of these communities. If you look in the accompanying paper for this, which you can find on both the Talkwalker website and the Trust Insights website, we have a list of 86 of these networks. And some of this I've never heard of before. It took me a while to even figure out what they were. And our team, my partner Katie and I, were like Googling these things. What does this thing do? I don't know what else. I've never heard of this before. But there's probably a network that your audience uses, that your customers use, that you don't know about, that you might want to know about, that you might want to create content for, that you might want to target with. What's happening right now is going to be happening for a really long time, right? The so-called new normal, which is, yes, one of those buzzword terms, is going to be with us a while. How long? Likely till 2022, right? In some fashion. Things will not be back to, quote, normal, the way they were, until a vaccine is broadly available. So we have to adapt our marketing and the way we use data to stay in front of our customers, to stay in front of our audiences for a really long time. And we want to get in the habit of using this intelligence, using this information to provide more and better value. I want to close the lecture portion of this with 3 important rules for marketing during these uncertain times. Number 1, never market tragedy. There is a fine line between using data to create targeted messaging and just outright being an evil person and trying to take advantage of people. Never market tragedy. Number 2, and this is really important. This is super important in the early days of the pandemic, but it is still important now, is you have to earn the right to sell. Especially when you're using tools like social intelligence tools to identify communities you should be part of, like Curbly, for example, or fanfiction.net, or Discord, like a certain Discord server. You can't walk in there as a marketer and say, hey, I'm here. Who wants to buy my thing? Like, nobody wants that. And not only will you be ridiculed, But one of the greatest risks you have is you will then offend probably the most ardent, active people in that niche, in that community. And then your company's reputation is nearly permanently trashed, right? So you have to earn the right to sell. You have to join the community, be a part of the community, listen a lot first, participate as a individual human being and not a brand, and figure out what makes that community's pulse beat, and then figure out how you can start to add value. I joined a Discord server a few weeks ago for a project I was working on, and the first week or two, all I did was listen. Just listened. I introduced myself. I posted my little bio in the community, and then I just listened, just saw what people were talking about, checked out the bios, the people who were on that server, got an understanding of who they were, what the lingo was that they used to talk to each other. And only after a couple weeks did I feel comfortable enough to start participating in discussions and throwing things in. And now I'm part of that community and have contributed to it. And I still haven't, to me, I still don't feel like I have earned the right to sell anything in that community. I have earned the right to participate and be seen as a peer, but not necessarily to shove stuff down people's throats. So use this time and use this data to build those relationships first, and then you'll be able to sell much more easily. Selling is super easy, by the way, when somebody else is doing it for you. If you have generated so much goodwill in a community that other people talk about you, your job is done. 3, when it comes to participating, especially in niche communities, but in general about the pandemic itself, I always go by the rule of, if you have to ask, the answer is no. Or in this case, you have to ask, it can be misconstrued. If you're like, I have this promotion I want to send out. What if it's going to offend anybody? If you have to ask, the answer is probably yes. It's going to offend somebody. It's going to have a negative outcome. Rethink it. Okay, what are the ways you could take this email, this social post, this video, this whatever? What are the ways that it could be misconstrued, and how can you make it as bulletproof as possible to avoid sticking your foot in your mouth? Right? That requires 2 things: A, common sense, and B, having a community of your own that you trust to be honest with you, to say, hey, if I publish this, and maybe it's not a huge community, maybe it's just a mastermind or a focus group. If I publish this, folks, would any of you be offended? Could you see any way that that a reasonable person would be offended by this image or this language? And if one of the 5 people in the focus group says, yeah, that I could see, somebody, someone of Korean heritage being upset by this. Oh, all right, I'm going to go back and sharpen my pencil and try not to do that again. So these are the rules for, I think, operating in the environment that we're in, using niche social networks, using video on YouTube, using the gaming community and what people are doing for leisure while they're sheltering in place. As a marketer, go out and figure out where your audience is, study them, and then use that to place your bets as to where you're going to invest your time and your efforts. So with that, I think we're going to open it up to questions.
Chris, thank you very much. For those of you who joined in maybe a little bit later, my name is Todd Grossman. I'm the CEO for the Americas for Talkwalker, and I am here with Chris Penn, the co-founder and chief data scientist for Trust Insights. And we're here to answer some questions. Chris, I love to just say thank you for sharing. I don't see you ever as a seller, but someone who is very helpful and gives it your all for everyone. There's a question that we have here, and it talks a little bit about you're the guru in terms of doing data gymnastics, as I would say. Taking data somewhere, putting it somewhere else, doing a backflip and putting it all around. And someone's asking here, what are your top tips for getting insights fast from Talkwalker? Can you give us a step-by-step example on how he uses the platform to get insights?
The answer to that is straightforward. It is using the scientific method, which means you start with a question. What question do you want to have answered? Then you define the variables and the data you're going to need to extract the answer to that question. So, for example, if I want to know more about Google Analytics, let's say I'm saying, how many of my customers really use attribution data in Google Analytics, right? That's a good question. That's a question I legitimately want the answer to. How do I define that? Well, this is where I would use things like the Boolean syntax in Talkwalker. So I would want to search for Google Analytics, probably in quotes, and I would maybe want to also include Google Tag Manager, Google Data Studio, maybe attribution analysis, and then use negative query things to knock out certain terms. Like there's a very well-known politician whose name appears to get into every single social conversation ever. I want to knock that out. I don't want any of that in there. So that I'm defining that query. And I pull an initial data set, do some exploration. What's in here? Is there anything in here that could even start to hint at the question? And then I build a hypothesis based on the exploration I've done. Is there, for example, I should say a hypothesis is a provably true or false statement about a single condition. So I would say if my customers are using attribution analysis, then they would talk in social conversations about Google Attribution 360. That's a provably true or false statement. And then using a tool like I personally use R, but you could certainly use Excel for even for that. Python if you want to get fancy. IBM Watson Studio. You'd start to deconstruct those conversations. You would do something, for example, an advanced technique called vectorization. What are the words that appear around attribution in all these social conversations? Extract it out and go, okay, how much of these are relevant? And then continue through this process of refining a hypothesis and understanding it. That's how you get insights out of any data set, not just the ones from a platform like Talkwalker, but any data set. Question, define, and build a hypothesis, and then prove it true or false.
Thank you. We have a question from a mid-sized nonprofit organization here. They say, we are working to post more videos that we create on Facebook. Should those videos be posted as the original video file directly on Facebook page or a video link to our YouTube page? Does that change the algorithm, user engagement, or length of watching the videos?
So there's two answers here. The first answer is the generally accepted answer among social media practitioners, which is to generally upload video, raw video files straight to the target platform, because in the past, those target platforms have favored the native upload of content versus a link. That said, one of the most important things I want people to take away from today's talk is actually something that Jay Baer said to me, my friend Jay Baer. He said, everything before March 8th is unreliable data, right? Because the world has changed so much. So we don't know anything anymore. We have to now reprove everything. So in a question like this, I would, if you have 5 videos or 10 videos or whatever, I would A/B test, split them in half, try and post them on similar days and times, and see which one performs better. Does the link perform better? Does the native file perform better? We don't know because people's behaviors change so much. Just as a quick snapshot, we were chatting with some folks in the Analytics for Marketers Slack community, and they were saying, yeah, Facebook's ad prices have gone through the floor. What used to be a dollar per CPM has down like 6 cents CPMs right now because there's so much inventory, because there's so many people watching, and companies have pulled back their spend because of the economic hardships that are happening, that Facebook is a totally different advertising environment than it was 8 weeks ago. So again, we don't know. So I would say for this question, test it. Test everything, and assume that you're going to get very different answers now, and keep testing over the next weeks and months, because again, people's behavior will change some more.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from Vicky. Is Snapchat a good platform for advertising? What are your thoughts here, Chris?
You're going to get real tired of this answer. It depends. It depends on who your audience is, where they are, and what their behaviors, what kinds of behaviors they have, and whether that platform is a good fit for your company or for your brand. This is, again, it's so important to ask your audience through email surveys, text surveys, paid social media surveys, whatever possible. Ask people where they're spending their time. If you send out, say 1,000 messages by any service or means, and 0 people come back and say Snapchat is where they spend their time, then no, Snapchat's not a good place for your audience, for your advertising, because nobody's there that you care about. One of the easiest tricks I love doing is start up a fresh Gmail account, brand spanking new. Take your customer database, load the top 1,000 customers or best contacts or whatever into that Gmail account, just the emails, and then go sign up for a system like Snapchat or TikTok or whatever. One of the first things these systems do, they say, hey, you're joining for the first time. Do you want to connect your Gmail account? Do you want to connect your Facebook account or whatever? And it will ask for access to your address book. You give it access to your Gmail account, that fresh new one you just started, and then you count how many people out of that 1,000 are on that service, right? And if it's 0, then guess what? Your audience isn't there. So even something as simple as that will give you insight. But I would just straight out ask people, do you spend time on Snapchat? If so, how much? And if there's a yes, then start looking at other ads and other content on Snapchat. Try creating content for Snapchat or TikTok first to see if you even have the ability to capture the zeitgeist of that channel. And if you can get like, a few views on it or some level of approbation from your audience, then consider advertising. I wouldn't go straight to advertising until you've proven to yourself that you can speak in a way that resonates with that channel. I spend a lot of time on Reddit. I am astonished at the number of brands who are so tone deaf in understanding how to advertise on Reddit and how much damage it does their brand when they post an ad trying to be cute or clever, and then just the flames of comments, the river of fire that follows the ads, because you can comment on ads on Reddit, clearly shows that they've done more harm to their brand than good.
Chris, I'm going to continue. We have a lot of engagement here, and our listeners are still on. Another question here: How do you market an industry that is on pause? For example, travel during this time.
The industry is on pause. The consumer is not on pause. If anything, people are more desperate for any kind of travel-related content just to mentally get themselves out of the same 4 walls they've been looking at for the last 8 weeks. We actually work with a number of travel folks, and the big thing is this: understand what it is that you do as a brand, and then figure out how to create an alternative for that right now. So, for example, one of my favorite diversions, I have an Oculus Quest headset, and there's an app on there called Wander, which uses Google Street View, and it gives you, full 360 view of in Google Street View. So I can pop anywhere in the world where there's a Google Street View place and just look around. I've been to places like Pornari Citadel in Lower Wallachia, which is in Romania. I would never go there in person in my life, right? There's no reason for me to go there, and right now I can't, but I can go there and see the ancient family citadel of Vlad Tepes, Vlad the Impaler, and they actually have statues of like impaled people at this place. It's fascinating. If you're a travel brand, you have expertise. You have subject matter expertise in travel. What content are you creating to give people travel-like experiences now so that it creates interest and memory and drums up business when people are permitted to travel again? Have you created a virtual Earth travel guide? Everybody can access Google Earth for free, right? Go to earth.google.com. What is your curated list of destinations people should get a taste of, a sense of, and then expand it? If you are, say, a luxury travel brand that works with, you have really good partners, can you imagine sending somebody a 15-minute YouTube video and with a personal chef concierge service, sending them the kit of foods that are popular in that location? Like, hey, cook this at home while you watch this video to experience a little bit of this destination. And then, when travel opens up, book your package to have this for real. That's how you market something that you can't have access to right now. The demand is there. It's the supply that's the problem.
I think we should do Napa Valley and have a wine tasting, you and me.
Why not? I mean, you could. You absolutely could. There's no reason. People are shipping wine all day, every day. You can do those virtual tastings. You could have Zoom wine parties or whatever. There is an answer for every single industry. You have to find it.
Another question here: what's the future of social media? Would we fast track the evolution of this?
It's funny. This whole crisis has fundamentally brought people back to social media as it was intended to be 10 years ago, where it is a place where you just talk to other people. You have conversations with brands pulling back and stuff. Now, there is still a lot of other stuff. There's a tremendous amount of, political discourse and things on social that can make it sometimes unpleasant. But fundamentally, people are using these tools to reconnect with each other. And I don't think that will be forgotten as things open back up over time. For sure, companies are looking at the way they've worked in the last 8 weeks, how they had to scramble to get employees working from home for many jobs, and gone, do we really need to spend as much as we do on commercial real estate when we got a fair amount of work done while this was happening? And so the future of a lot of this stuff is figuring out what people are going to do differently. And you can generally count on a couple things. You can generally count on greed, right? Companies will say, we want to spend less money rather than more. So how can we reduce our real estate footprint? You can generally count on convenience. People will always opt for convenience over security, over privacy, over anything. People love convenience. What are the things that you see happening now that give people those conveniences or those emotional uplifts? Those are the things that are going to stick around after this ends, and that is what will determine the future of social media, is what habits we've picked up that will stick. There's a fascinating study. I know there's a lot of folks in the self-help industry who love to say, like, you can change a new habit in 3 weeks. Well, a study from the Journal of European Psychology said it's closer to 70 days to get a new habit to become autonomous. We're getting there. This, for a lot of us, is like day 65, day 66. And so a lot of the things that we've been doing these past 2 months, some of them are going to stick around.
Does the time of posting or marketing content affects the reach of the post or on their audience?
Logically, yes. If no one's awake when your post goes up, no one's going to see it. Now, that said, as is a frequent complaint on Instagram, with a non-chronological timeline is less important, and more important is the level of engagement that your audience already has with you. But there are terrific tools that will help you understand this. You can extract data about a topic or an audience or an account from Talkwalker and pull out the timestamps and build yourself a nice little heat map in a spreadsheet of when conversations peak the most. You can also, if your social posting software does it, I know Agorapulse does this really well. Just see a heat map built into the software. Here's when your posts are getting the most engagement. With the caveat that if you only post at noon, your analysis will always say that your best engagement is at noon because you never post any other time. So again, I will go back to the scientific method. Create a cadence of content that is spread out evenly around the clock. Run that for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then look at the data and say, okay, if we were posting on the hour every hour for 168 hours a week, what hour and day of the week did we see things pop for the last 3 weeks? That level of testing is what you need to have in order to understand when is the audience actually there.
Yes. Time for a few more. How can restaurants and bars best use social media to connect with customers as they reopen?
So there's two things there. One is the outreach part, which is relatively straightforward: direct messaging, advertising, stuff like that to connect with customers. But the bigger thing is this: the messaging. How are you going to communicate it? If you look at data from like OpenTable, in March, orders and reservations dropped off about a week and a half to 2 weeks before lockdowns began. Consumers were like, I'm not going out to dinner because this, it looks like something bad is happening. So a big part of hotels, restaurants, bars, any place where there's congregation is communicating to people, here's how we're going to help keep you safe. Here are all the precautions. One of the most insightful things that I saw somebody talking recently about in the hospitality industry was housekeeping used to be a job function we tried to hide, right? We want the house cleaning staff to show up during the day. We don't want them to talk to customers. And now it sounds like, no. You want housekeeping in your room with the massive spray gun, washing down every surface. You want to see housekeeping. You want to see safety. You want to see cleanliness. And so for any of these industries, you have to demonstrate, here are all the precautions that we are doing to keep you safe. Like, there's every window in the restaurant is open, or it's sidewalk dining. Servers change gloves after every interaction. Hand sanitizer stations, little bottles of sanitizer on every single table. Whatever you can do that will reassure people that they are safer than they would be at a different establishment. And the company that communicates safety the best is going to win, because the nature of a pandemic and disease is that it is so frightening because we can't see it. We can see a caricature of a terrorist character, right? We can see a tropical storm hitting us, and you go outside, there's like boards flying around. You can't see disease. You cannot see infection, but you fear it. It's a primal response, and we fear most what we can't see. So if you can elevate the things that people can see, that they can perceive, they will feel better. So that's the most important part for communicating with customers, is to communicate that they are safer.
Very good. Chris, we have a comment from one of our listeners, from Cheryl. She just wanted to let you know that this was great, very engaging. Your humor and insight are very powerful. And I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us. For those who have other questions, we'll get back to you directly. And I really encourage you to register for one of Chris's newsletters. And we didn't talk about your CO2 canister in the back. We'll get that next time, perhaps.
Yep. Make sure, if you haven't already, please go to one of these two links. They're both the same. You'll get the same paper. Download the paper, read it through. And if you have further questions, you want to touch base, go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers, and you can continue the conversation. You can ask questions. There's folks from Trust Insights there. There's folks from Talkwalker there. And ask the questions that we didn't get to on this webinar. Thanks so much for being here.
Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.